At long last, it's time for my post-spring Big 12 power rankings for the 2025 college football season. Obviously, the spring well in the rearview mirror at this point. We are just a couple of months away from the season. I know a lot of you were anxiously awaiting this Big 12 power ranking, and it's finally here. So we're going to do it exactly like we did the other ones, a tier list and a power ranking side by side. But let's start by talking about what the tiers are in this Big 12 tier list, because the hierarchy of the conference is just so much different than any other conference that we're kind of mixing them up a little bit. And we have the same tiers for every other conference, but let's talk about some of the key differences. And that's going to be at the top. Big 12 Contention A is the top group, and Big 12 Contention B is the second group. And that's just because there are so many teams that can win this conference. And honestly, probably every team in this conference can win it all, because there's not like a huge talent gap or huge recruiting disparity from the top teams to the bottom teams. Arizona State was picked to finish last in the Big 12 last year, and they won the whole thing. So it'd be foolish to suggest anything otherwise. So Contention A, Contention B, the only difference between those two being in Contention A, there's just going to be a smidgen, a degree of more certainty with the teams in that tier versus Contention B. Then we've got our spoilers, teams that could totally crash the party, totally find a way to make it happen, be in that conversation realistically. Bowl hopefuls are going to be the teams where they're not necessarily expecting to be in the conference title picture. Now, it could happen because anything could happen in this conference, but teams in the bowl hopefuls tier will be more hoping for a bowl game. And then finally, we've got rebuilding at the bottom, and alongside the tier list, we'll also be power rating them just like we've done for every single conference. So let's start by going to the bottom and the rebuilding tier, which is going to have two teams in the Big 12, UCF and Arizona. And we'll start with UCF because they are at the bottom of the power ranking at number 16. Scott Frost reunites with the Knights, and this year, it's just going to be a ton of questions with how Scott Frost is able to adapt to the modern era of college football. We've never seen him be a head coach in this era. We've never seen him succeed in this era. The last time we saw him at a power conference team in Nebraska, it was a disaster. He was terrible, and he even had the benefit of the divisions in the Big Ten, and so they had lighter schedules. This wasn't the modern Big Ten we're talking about, where it was this gauntlet where you've got Oregon in there, and you've got Washington and USC in the mix as well, and all these teams at peak efficiency. No, this was a Nebraska team that was playing in the Big Ten West that was struggling. I keep that in mind, and I also keep in mind that when he won at UCF, they were in the American Conference. The Big 12 is going to be much deeper week to week, much better week to week, and it was such a small sample size with him elsewhere. If we look at tangibly what he actually did do, I do think Steve Cooper is a solid offensive coordinator this season, should help the offense be productive. I like some of the guys they were able to land, like Taven Jackson. He showed some great things last season as a backup at Indiana, and there's some good things happening on offense. Jaden Nixon, the Western Michigan transfer, former All-MAC running back, that's a great addition as well, but it's defensively I'm really concerned. The hiring of Alex Grinch. Grinch was notoriously really bad as a defensive coordinator at USC, and yes, USC was in a tougher situation, but with the guys they added, I don't know how great they're going to be. They used the portal a ton. They were 106 in returning production, did not recruit many guys. They went heavy on the portal, so a lot of volatility. I'm concerned about their team as a whole. The next team we've got here is the Arizona Wildcats in this rebuilding tier. They're at number 15. And Arizona is one of many teams, to be frank, on this list that scare me because they could pop and could absolutely way outperform expectations this year. Year one was a disaster for Brent Brennan and company, but I really think that with another year, they might actually correct some of those missteps that they made. One of them was their offensive coordinator hire, so they went ahead and fired their guy and brought in Seth Doge, which is a much better hire, I think. But also, they were trying to blend too much of what was already there with Arizona because the pressure was there to sort of replicate that with Fafita staying and T-Mac staying, and them trying to do that instead of just rocking with Brent Brennan's identity really hurt them. So this season, they've got decent returning production. A lot of their defenders come back, and offensively, they went out in the portal, landed some solid guys like Chris Hudson, wide receiver Luke Wyson from New Mexico, and they still have no Fafita. So they could definitely be very effective on offense. And on defense, there's some upside there. They did take some tough losses in the offseason, like Dacario Davis leaving. Their talent level might not be as great as last year, but I think there could be more continuity. There's a scenario where Arizona pops this year and has a pleasantly surprising season. I just don't think it'll happen because there's a lot of uncertainty with this team. But let's go up a tier to the Bowl Hopefuls tier, where we've got 4 teams here, and we'll start with the Houston Cougars. Houston is a team that absolutely is just like Arizona, and honestly all the teams in this tier are. It's probably going to sound redundant, I'm going to say it a lot, but the teams that scare me. Houston is a team that has a lot of great pieces. Their talent level still isn't quite where you would want to see it, but they're 23rd in returning production. They return about half their starters from last season. Probably just a little bit under that, but I just like the staff that Willie Fritz built this year. Slade Nagel is their offensive coordinator, which I thought was a great hire. His familiarity with Fritz's system should help that Houston offense, and I think they're just a lot more talented. Connor Wegman comes in, the former 5-star quarterback. They bring in some excellent transfers. The O-line completely overhauled. They're trying to sort of reset things there, and they just really did some great things. They laid the groundwork defensively last season, so Houston could be surprisingly potent on offense and has some solid groundwork on defense, things to work with this season. They have a schedule that's workable in the early going. They could come out of the gate and look pretty solid. So Houston's a team with a lot of things to like, but still just not as talented as some of these other teams. And they were bad last season. Don't get it twisted. Despite showing some life, they did go 4-8. They weren't a very good team. And so there's still a little bit more room to grow for the Houston Cougars. If they made a bowl game, it would totally be a success this year. We've got Colorado. The Buffaloes lose their two massive stars in Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, and they're 89th in returning production, and they're just going to be in a strange position this year. Dion has routinely outperformed expectations, and this year the expectations are a little bit lower for Colorado. I've got them here at 12th in my Big 12 power rankings, one spot above Houston, and I could see people, reading that as disrespect, and, maybe it is. Maybe I've been routinely too low on this team. They did go in the portal pretty heavily again. Pat Shurmur is back at offensive coordinator after a solid year. At quarterback, they've got a solid situation with Juju Lewis and Caden Salter. Salter likely to be the guy. They've got the weapons. I think their offense will figure it out, but the O-line is still an issue and has been an issue. It was disastrous last year. They're trying to overhaul it again, basically trying to keep the few things that worked, like Jordan Seaton at offensive line. And defensively, they were just way too sporadic last season. I think that's going to continue this year. So without their two megastars, they're not going to be bailed out in as many games. And another team where a bowl game, I think, should be considered a success for them. It's probably going to be a bit more of a rebuilding year for the Buffaloes, especially because Coach Prime has sort of adjusted his approach. It's back to being a little bit more conventional in terms of the way he's bringing talent onto the roster, which is using recruiting a little bit more heavily than he did initially. We've got Oklahoma State also in here, who I'll talk about next. The Cowboys are actually 14th, so I'm going back a little bit in the power ranking. Sorry if that bothers some of you, but Cowboys are just in a complete unknown situation this year because Mike Gundy has always recruited and developed at an extremely high level, and that's been his formula, and that's been what he's done to get Oklahoma State to be successful, and yet they absolutely got decimated by the portal and absolutely brought in so many guys via the portal this offseason that it is just a complete unknown. It's a very, very new team. There's so many new faces here. Yes, there's some talented ones. The offense can't be worse than last season, it feels like. The defense was also pretty disastrous, but Gundy just flipping his staff, flipping his players, it is a complete unknown. I don't think Oklahoma State fans know. I don't think anyone knows what Oklahoma State will look like or be this year. I'm just worried that the game has passed up Gundy a little bit, and I think Gundy thrives when people doubt him. So I'm going to be one of those doubters, and if Oklahoma State has a great season, I'll happily take the credit this year. I'm worried about the Cowboys, though, because this is just such a complete unknown for this regime. Moving up to number 11, we've got West Virginia. West Virginia, a team with first-year head coach Rich Rodriguez this year. He brings in defensive coordinator Zach Alley. He'll serve as the offensive coordinator, Rich Rodriguez will. And I'm excited about this team. I think they can do some interesting things. I've seen a lot of people putting them closer to last in this conference. It's true. They did overhaul a ton this offseason. They have a lot of new faces around campus, but they also were able to keep a little bit together. They've got Nico Marshall, who could end up being the signal caller. He's available in there. They also have the former Texas A&M quarterback Jalen Henderson, who, if healthy, could be a great signal caller for this offense. Jaheim White is back for West Virginia. They've just got a lot of key weapons that actually hung around with this team and on this roster that I think could be a solid springboard for them this season. It's going to take Alley a little bit to flip that defense, but if this offense isn't really good right off the bat under Rich Rodriguez, that would honestly really surprise me. So I'm big on West Virginia. I've got them there. That wraps up this tier. Let's move up to the spoilers tier. In the spoilers tier, we've got just two teams, Cincinnati and Kansas. We'll start with the Cincinnati Bearcats, coming off of a year where they just missed a bowl game. They were right there, rounding the corner, and I think they're an even more talented team this year. They're 12th in the country in returning production, huge number I look at. Scott Satterfield has really just incrementally improved this team. He took over a really rough situation, a team that got gutted by the portal, transitioning to a power conference, and I just think he's an underrated head coach, and I think a lot of the things he's done is underrated. I look at this team, there are all conference players all over the place. I look at Dante Corleone. I look at all of Brennan Sorsby's got all conference potential. They land a big guy in Tyree Walker. They've got Joe Royer, who was an all Big 12 tight end last season. There is a lot to like around this team. They got to replace a little bit on the offensive line, but I truly think this defensive line is going to be one of the best in the conference this season, and it's going to anchor their defense and put them in a position to actually finish some of those games this year and get to a bowl game under Scott Satterfield, which will be a huge step in the right direction. But this team could totally play a spoiler role this year. They are talented enough to make that kind of noise in this conference this season. And then we've got the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas ends the season last year on a disappointing slide. Actually the exact opposite of that. I correct myself. They ended on a hot streak after a disappointing slide to start the year. 4 straight wins or something like that, just knocking off contenders. They showed a lot of their potential. And so basically what Lance Leipold did this offseason was he just took everything that was working in the back half of that year and he just plopped it into this year. And so Kansas has got a lot of things to be excited about. Their defensive coordinator, DK McDonald, built a solid foundation at the end of last year, and then they went ahead with Jim Zabrowski. He's going to be their guy, an offensive coordinator. They let Jeff Grimes walk. So there's a lot to like in that regard. Their returning production numbers are middling at best. They did get more talented this offseason, I would say. Maybe that might be a bit of a stretch. They did lose some staples like Mello Dotson, Kobe Bryant, Devin Neal this offseason. And so there could be some growing pains. Most of their offensive line is back, which is solid. I think they will have a pretty great offensive line this year. Some solid transfers in there as well. But there's a few glaring concerns, I think, defensively this season, and I struggle to see how they're going to replace the production of some of those offensive weapons they lost. So we'll see if Jalen Daniels can play better this year and put Kansas in a position to succeed. But the other key thing to look at is the Jayhawks have a pretty difficult schedule this year. They draw some tough road games. Their schedule dynamics aren't great. So for the Jayhawks, it's going to be a battle there, but they showed the potential they have with a lot of the same parts to be in Big 12 contention mode. So Kansas is a team to watch out for sure. They are 9th in the power rankings as well. And so let's move up to the next tier. So we are in Big 12 contention B. I've sort of split the tiers. TCU, Iowa State, Utah, BYU in this tier. We'll start with the Horned Frogs, who are also 7th. So let's just start with BYU because I have been going out of order and that might be bothering people. We'll start with BYU, who's 8th in the power rankings. With the Cougars, they are a team that obviously returns a lot. There's a lot to like about them. They return a ton of those defensive contributors. Their offense, nearly the entire starting lineup is back, which is a ton of things to really like about a team that looked really good and was right there and arguably should have been in the Big 12 title game, but fell victim to a weird tiebreaker essentially. And that game against Arizona State, they were very close to pulling out on the road. A lot of things to like there. For me, the uncertainty comes from, I think people underestimate just how much they lost off of that defensive front. I know some people are very high on it, but there was a pretty decent amount of talent lost in that department. Their secondary will also be a bit of a question mark this season, but really more than anything, it's the off-the-field stuff. It's the off-the-field stuff at the quarterback position, and we've seen a roster that is extremely talented in Utah, in the same state, that had some quarterback issues that were obviously of a completely different genre. But Jake Retzloff might not be the quarterback for BYU this year, and that concerns me. And that is the reason that BYU, who was 5th in my power rankings earlier this offseason, is now 8th. I am taking note of that. I am concerned at that. We will see if they answer those questions this season. TCU is the next team on here. It's 7th in power rankings in this tier, and they just have an elite offense as far as the Big 12 is concerned, and as far as college football is concerned, a pretty top-tier offense as well. Josh Hoover comes back. They've got a bunch of those starters here. They've got Eric McAllister at wide receiver. They've got an offensive line that is a seasoned group led by Colton Deary, shout out to him at center, and I just really like it. Andy Avalos enters his second year as the defensive coordinator. He's got some work to do to get TCU up to speed. And I really do think the Horned Frogs could become a little bit more two-dimensional on offense. That'll help them a lot. If they can do that, if this defense takes a big step under Avalos, which I think they're totally capable of doing, Avalos is a solid defensive coordinator, they'll be in a great position and they will really have a shot. The question mark with this team, and the reason they're in contention group B instead of A, is that defense. Even though their offense is so excellent, it's been shown in this conference you can't just be one-dimensional and only have one good side of the football. Both have to show up throughout the year to contend for a conference title. And let's go to the next team. It's going to be Iowa State, 6th in my power rankings, and in this tier as Contenders B. They were in the Big 12 title game last season. They were close to claiming a conference title. They actually ended up winning 10 games. The Pop-Tarts Bowl was a great year for them, and they returned a lot to like with this team. John Heacock's defense was really, really solid, and they return a ton of talent. The secondary has all Big 12 standout Jontez Williams coming back. Almost forgot his name there. And a lot to really like it. Linebacker, they've got anchors. So the defense is not really a concern for me. That's what I was trying to say. It's on offense where the concern comes, and this is the reason they're in Contender Group B versus A. They have 2 NFL wide receivers last season, and Rocco Becht has had them at Iowa State the whole time. And so they need somebody to step up. They might have the guy who can step up, who's going to be Chase Sowell, and they need him to be great. They need him to really be a great wide receiving threat. Same with Xavier Townsend. If they don't have those guys step up in a big way, Iowa State's offense could really take a hit this year. They were really reliant on those 2 guys to be prolific, and they bailed them out of a lot of big moments. So they've got the ground game in Carson Hansen, Abu Sama. They've got that. They also have their quarterback in Rocco Becht to make it happen. I'm just concerned about what they have at wide receiver this season. So we'll see. We'll see if they're up to the task and if they're able to, get back to the Big 12 title game. It's definitely possible. Next up, we got the Utah Utes. Utah coming off of a disastrous season. Basically, everything went wrong for them. And the answer this offseason was to fire their offensive coordinator and bring in Jason Beck. And Jason Beck is their new offensive coordinator from New Mexico. They bring with him the quarterback, Devin Dampier, who was phenomenal as a freshman this last season. And they bring in so many players that were contributors for other teams last season to help just kickstart this offense. Wayshawn Parker was a beast as a freshman at Washington State. Their likely wide receiver 1 is going to be Ryan Davis, who developed a connection with Devin Dampier last season. Tia Otto, a prolific pass catcher from Utah State. So they really flipped a lot of the things on offense, and they're going to have an elite offensive line, one of the best in the country this season with all the guys they come back, Logan Fano and company. And so there's a lot that is going to be really good, or I guess it's Spencer Fano. Logan Fano's on the defensive line. But the D-line is going to be in a great spot. I trust the defense. The defense was great last year despite a dysfunctional situation. It's all going to be about how that offense gels, and I think it definitely could this year. And finally, we are at the top tier, which is Contention A. Big 12 Contention A, I should say. We got 4 teams in this tier as well. Texas Tech, going to be the first one I talk about. The Red Raiders coming in at number 2, though, so I'm going out of order again. I'm sorry, guys. But the Red Raiders are a team I sort of have come around a little bit more to this offseason. I don't know if that was a grammatically correct sentence. Probably was not. But they have a lot of contributors to really, really like. And then they went crazy in the transfer portal. The more I've marinated on this team and the more I've thought about them, the more I've just been impressed by how excellent that defensive front looks and how excellent it could be this season with Romello Height, with Lee Hunter, with David Bailey. There are just so many guys that could be menaces up front. And then offensively, they've got the key pieces returning and the key transfer portal guys coming in. Caleb Douglas returning, Baron Morton returning. They've got all of the tools to be a Big 12 contender this year. It's just the thing that keeps making me doubt this team is just recent history with Texas Tech. But I don't think Texas Tech has ever recruited at this level or portaled at this level. So there's reasons to be confident about this team this year, despite what recent history might suggest. Kansas State's going to be at number 4. I'll bounce back down to number 4 with the Wildcats. They've been such a consistent team. They could very easily be number 2, even number 1 on this list. Honestly, any of the teams up in this tier are pretty much interchangeable. Ton to like. They bring back Avery Johnson, who I expect to make another jump. DJ Giddens is gone, so they're going to turn to Dylan Edwards, who has a ton of speed. I think he's going to be excellent for them. Jace Brown at wide receiver. The offensive line is absolutely fantastic. They're going to be in a great position offensively. The defense really returned in solid fashion and was reliable last season. They do lose a few key players on the defensive side of the football. I thought they replaced them effectively, though. the defensive front specifically is going to be a strength of this defense, including the linebacking core, so I guess the front seven as a whole. So there's a lot of things to really like here. We'll see how things happen as they continue their transition away with Matt Wells at their offensive coordinator position. They're going to be in the picture. It's just been a matter of them not being able to finish the season and sort of stumbling as the year has gone on the last couple of years. And so this is a big year for them, looking to finish strong and finish a season. And let's go ahead and jump to Baylor, who's going to be at the 3 spot. They were formerly at 2, but then I got too high on Texas Tech, so they're kind of back down to 3. But like I said, these guys are all interchangeable. Baylor was one of the hottest teams in the country at the end of last season, and I think they can ride a lot of that momentum into this year. I just have a ton of faith in Jake Spavital's offense now after what we saw. They got Sawyer Robertson back. They got Bryson Washington, Josh Cameron, arguably one of the best wide receiver, quarterback, running back trios in the entire conference, and arguably one of the best in the country. And they also return a lot of what was working and clicking last year on defense. Dave Aranda's specialty is defense. I think they'll continue to build upon what they did well there. There's just a lot of certainty with this group. I really like the things they did, and Dave Aranda's done it before. He's won a Big 12 title. They'll be in a position where I think they can totally do that this season. They're 11th in returning production. So Big 12, Baylor as a Big 12 contender, I am very high on them. And then last, and certainly not least, in fact, best, I've got the Arizona State Sun Devils at number 1. ASU is just everything you would want to see in a team that would try to repeat in this conference. After winning the conference last year and in fairly dominant fashion at the end there, they are 2nd in returning production. They return 8 starters on offense, 8 starters on defense. They return Sam Levitt. They return Jordan Tyson, who is an all-conference wide receiver. They return so many of the big guys in their offensive line from last season. They return so many key players from this defense that helped fuel them. They did lose a few solid pieces, but Xavier Alford returns. He was an all-Big 12 guy. They just have so much to like on both sides of the football, and it's just such a hard thing to ignore what they've done, what they bring back for this season. And I know that the recent narrative in the Big 12 has been chaos and anything can happen, anything can flip on a dime, but I really feel like the Sun Devils, it's going to take a lot to keep them from being back in the Big 12 title game this season. Their schedule is not too bad either. They get a lot of their key games in the right spots. They get some key games at home. And I trust their play callers. I trust everything they were able to keep together. Brian Ward on defense is amazing. Marcus Arroyo, one of the most underrated coaching staffs in the country. And Kenny Dillingham. I mean, they just are built for the big moment, it feels like. And so I'm very high in the Sun Devils this season. So there you have it. My Big 12 power rankings for the 2025 season and my Big 12 tier list in totality. Everything laid out for you guys to see. This concludes the power ranking videos. It took me several months to complete because I was busy hard at work on my preview magazine, which I'll link in the bio again. It's completely free if you want the digital version. Physical version you could buy. It's $25. And yeah, I just wrapped that puppy up. So I'm getting back to the old YouTube grind. Big 12 power ranking today. We'll get some more videos out hopefully this week, potentially next week. So let me know down in the comments what other videos you want to see covered. And that's all I got for you guys today. I will see you guys later this week.